What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Ron, and this is the very first episode in the Ron's Blind Buy channel. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to check this video out and watch it with me. I have 5 bands today that I'm going to go ahead and review and talk a little bit about. So let's get started. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, checking everything out with me. I really appreciate it. So the very first band I want to talk about, I actually checked out 2 of their albums, and the band is called Moriah. And this is their first album. It's their self-titled album, and this is their second album, Miracle Temple. I enjoyed both of these albums quite a bit. I actually first checked them out through the cover art for Miracle Temple, which I thought was beautiful. I really like the cover, or the colors in it. The green haze with the orangish yellow, the burnt yellow on the fire. I thought it was just a beautiful and very stunning cover. I actually was able to score both of them on eBay for less than the price of this one alone. So I just figured, screw it, pick them both up and check them out. This album has a great cover as well. The colors in it are beautiful. It's a very dull, yellowy haze, and then it's contrasted beautifully by the multiple colors on the bed. So a little bit about the music. This album and this album sound substantially different. This album sounds more like Rilo Kiley to me than this album does. This album here is more along the alt country lines. Even the vocals are drastically different on the album. This one here reminds me in the vein of Rilo Kiley, later era Jenny Lewis, whereas this one here reminds me just completely of Dolly Parton. And when I first put it in, I was really taken back by the vocals on it, as I had listened to this one first, and it was quite shocking how similar the vocalist's vocal style was to Dolly Parton. It sounded pretty much spot on. Overall, both albums are fantastic. This one, like I said, a little more indie rock, a little more folk rock. This one here is much more alternative country. So if either of those are your style, I would definitely recommend them both highly. I liked Miracle Temple a little bit more than the self-titled album, just because I'm more partial to the alternative country style and sound. And I absolutely loved the vocals of this one as opposed to this one, which didn't really grasp me like this one did. So that's Mount Moriah. Next is Neil Halstead's Oh Mighty Engine. This album, again, I thought the artwork was pretty cool. Kind of a cool little watercolor painting there. From it, I just kind of made the assumption that it was probably going to be some kind of alt country. And it actually wasn't. It's all acoustic. It's folk music. It's very similar to Alexi Murdoch, who is a folk artist who is fantastic. If you've never heard his album Time Without Consequence, I definitely recommend picking it up. It's one of my favorite folk albums of all time. And I mean, everything down to the vocals and the style of playing the music, everything was very reminiscent of Alexi Murdoch. It is probably my favorite album that I've listened to of all of the albums so far. It's very relaxing. It's very peaceful. It's everything that you would want to hear in this type of album, in this type of music. So I would definitely recommend Neil Halstead's Oh Mighty Engine if you ever come across it and can pick it up and you're a fan of folk music such as Alexi Murdoch or Nick Drake. So thank you. This is Good Old War, their self-titled album, and then this is Come Back as Rain. This album I wasn't as into. The self-titled album I wasn't nearly as into as Come Back as Rain. I ended up looking them up after listening to it just to kind of see what they were lumped in as on Discogs, and it said like psychedelic folk or something like that, and I didn't really get the psychedelic part of it. The folk, it's kind of in there a little bit. They remind me more of Limbeck than I would say a folk artist. So that alternative country sound of like Limbeck. But I think what sets them apart from just another alt country band is that they sound more to me like a band that would have been on like VH1's Artists You Ought to Know years ago, with I would say like a Mumford and Sons or Passenger or like the Lumineers, something like that. I could see them fitting in with that more than on tour with Lucero or Drive By Truckers. So I think overall both albums are decent. I wasn't as into this one as I was this one. Listening to them, I was driving through rural Pennsylvania, and it was a nice sunny day, and it really set the kind of mood for that in tone. Vocally, the vocalist sounds just like the singer for Vampire Weekend, which is kind of cool. If you like the singer for Vampire Weekend, I'm a fan of their first album and not really a fan of anything after that. But that first album I do love. So if you're into, Vampire Weekend, if you're into Limbeck, if you're into any of those You Ought to Know artists, I would definitely recommend checking them out. Like I said, definitely check out Come Back as Rain as opposed to the self-titled album, which, like I said, I wasn't as into as this one. Next is Form Extremum. As I'm sure you could tell by the cover right there, it's a little different than the other albums I've listened to so far. They're actually an industrial goth rock, dark wave kind of mix up. Probably my least favorite so far. I'm not a huge industrial fan. Yeah, I like Nine Inch Nails. I like early Marilyn Manson. I like industrial black metal. Like, I'm a huge Thorns fan. I'm a fan of Black Lodge, of Control, Human Delete, Blue Dust Nord, things like that. But as far as just industrial itself, I'm not super into, especially bands like Ministry. I am not a fan of Ministry. I do like the vocalist of Ministry's one other project, Surgical Meth Machine. It reminds me of Thorns. But overall, I'm not a fan, and this, I think, falls more in line with a band like Ministry. When I was younger, there was this video game that my grandma got me one year for Christmas called Grid Runner, and essentially what it is it's just capture the flag in space. This album reminded me of that game so much because it sounded like what would have been the soundtrack for that game. And I think that was the only thing that kept me going through it. There were some parts in this album that I thought were kind of cool. At times it reminded me of later Atrocity, which I'm a big fan of them. So at times it reminded me of that, and I thought that was kind of cool. But overall, I just wasn't impressed, aside from the sort of almost kind of nostalgic feel of that Grid Runner game. So if you're looking for something to score your game of Capture the Flag against Martians, this would probably be something to check out. Otherwise, if you're not an industrial fan or a big fan of dark wave or goth music, I would stay clear of it. It didn't really capture me like other bands out there have. So next one, Strangers in Daylight, Letters of Transit. From what I can gather, these guys are actually from Ohio. They're local to Ohio. It's generic indie rock. There was nothing too extravagant, nothing that really stood out to me about it. It was good. It was decent. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad by any means. Memorable? No. Bad? No. Generic? Yeah. I wish I could give you someone to compare it to, but I mean, think of generic indie rock bands and you kind of hit it on the head. Again, if you want to even go the Vampire Weekend route, there are a lot of times where they are reminiscent of that. Even bands like Pretty Girls Make Graves at times. So if you're looking for just some new indie rock or a band maybe you've never listened to or heard of, Strangers in Daylight, it's definitely something to check out if you're a fan of the genre. If not, don't bother. But like I said, they are, I'm pretty sure, local to Ohio. So if nothing else, check them out because they're from my state. But other than that, they're just kind of one that if you like indie rock, check them out. If not, pass. So now that was all 5 of the albums or the bands that I was going to go ahead and review. There's one more that I want to throw in, and the reason I didn't really include it as part of my blind buys, specifically naming with those albums is because I bought the album. I've never heard anything about this artist, but apparently everyone else in the world has. And after I bought the album that night, I went home and there was like 20 people on my Instagram posting videos of it and things of that nature. But this is Billie Eilish. When we fall asleep, where do we go? I apologize for kind of butchering it there. I know nothing of this girl, or at least I didn't know anything of this girl prior to buying it. I was pleasantly surprised though. It's a very cool album. It's kind of, when I first bought it and saw the cover art, I thought it was kind of cool. I was honestly kind of expecting a mumble rapper or something of that nature, and it wasn't. It was actually pretty good pop rock. At times, it really reminded me of early Bjork, and I liked that quite a bit. There were other times where it reminded me of beats from a mumble rapper, and I was like, whatever, it is what it is. But overall, I really liked the album. It had a lot of good songs on it. I think the songs that I liked probably the most were the songs that I think everyone else knew or saw them as hits, like You Should See Me in a Crown. I thought that song was fantastic. I really liked Bad Guy and Zanny as well. But as I listened to it more later, it just kind of started to, okay, cool, I get the point. But overall, I think it was a pretty cool breath of fresh air for the pop rock or the mainstream music wave there. So if you haven't checked this out, by all means check it out, especially if you're a fan of modern music or a fan of mainstream music or pop rock and want to know what's kind of going on with the kids nowadays besides terrible mumble rap. So it's definitely something to check out. So well, that was it for my first video. I hope you liked the reviews in it. I didn't want to go too in-depth with things and really influence your opinion on stuff like that. Just more or less, hey, check this out. Hey, don't check this out. It's really up to you. Stay tuned. I'm going to be filming a number of videos. I have a couple other videos that I'm working on too for the channel that aren't necessarily blind buy videos, but videos of me going and checking out different record stores and buying different things and cool places along the way, and kind of shining a light on some places that I think people should really check out. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, subscribe below if you like my reviews. If there's anything you could think of that maybe I haven't heard of and you think I should check out, please feel free to drop it in the comments, and I will do my best to pick up any suggestions that I can, especially those that I haven't heard of yet. So I look forward to making more videos, and I look forward to you guys watching them. So thank you very much. If you like this video and want to know when more are coming up, please hit the subscribe button below. See you next time.